Please be seated. I just have one question. I don't normally have to ask it. Can you all hear me? Yes. Can you raise your hand if you can't hear me? No? Okay. Welcome to all of you. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tim Ellis, and I'm very privileged been asked to preside at today's service. And I would just like to say on behalf of the whole family, I want to welcome you with a very deep, sincere, and warm welcome. Because your presence today matters. It matters to the family, and it matters to us all. It's one of the ways we carry one another in moments like this, and so it is important. So we gather to remember and to give thanks for the life of Joyce McWilliams, for those that are more formal, for Anne Joyce McWilliams. However you knew her, we all know that it was the life she lived quietly, fiercely, faithfully, and with a deep, abiding sense of care for all around her. And we come together because we feel the pain of her loss. In different ways, perhaps, and at different levels, certainly. But all of that we feel, we need to acknowledge is real. And so we come with memory, with gratitude, and with love. And we trust that this time together in community, we will find something of what we need. In the stories that are shared, in the music that is played, in the silence, and in the presence of the sacred and holy one, and each other's presence as well. I'd invite you to join me as I bow my head and offer these words of prayer. O Holy One, the giver and the God of life, of every life that has ever been lived in love, we gather before you now to express our gratitude for Joyce, for whom she was, for all that she was, and what she shared. We are filled with gratitude for her strength, her steadiness, and her quiet, faithful care for others, for the ways she made room for people, not only in her life, but in her home, at her table, and in her heart. For she touched so many lives beyond her imagining and ours. We give thanks for the memories that we carry today, and for the love that remains among us. And we bring before you collectively our grief as well, for the spaces that seem empty that she leaves behind, for the changes that come with her absence, and for all that we now must hold without her. So we ask that you be present with us at this time to offer comfort where we need it, peace where we feel restless and anxious, and the strength for the days ahead. And we help us in all that we share today to honor Joyce's life with honesty, with gratitude, and with love. We ask this in the grace and sacredness of your holy presence that envelops us as we gather at this time. Amen. So at this time, I'm going to invite 3 different people up individually who generously and with love and grief share some words of remembrance of Joyce. I know that for many of you, you'll recognize yourself in these stories. You'll connect with them, and they'll touch places in your heart and soul where Joyce touched them as well. So at this time, I'd like to invite up Cousin Danelle. Have I got that right, Cousin? Yes, okay. So thank you, Danelle, for coming forward.
Ian checked in with me a couple weeks ago, wondering if there were any memories we wanted to share about his mom, Auntie Joyce. So I checked in with the people in my family, and the first thing that came to everyone's mind was what a fabulous cook she was. She must have loved to cook. My brother Garen, who boarded with Joyce and Grant while at school, especially remembers the meals he had while staying in Moose Jaw. At our house, Auntie Joyce was highly thought of as a good person who was kind and capable, had a good sense of humor, and who was hardworking. While we were reminiscing, Dad told a story about their younger days that I had never heard before, and thought it was a good example of life with brothers. It goes like this. Joyce's brothers, Edward and Danny, were curling in a bonspiel in Fillmore, a town close to Talmadge, and found they had won enough games that the finals may have been in reach, which was a problem because the curling schedule now conflicted with the milking schedule at their dairy. The boys could not let the team down. So little sister Joyce was recruited into milking, given a crash course on how to use the milking equipment, and left to handle 30 cows more or less on her own. The thanks she received for her stand-in efforts was to be teased about how much extra milk the cows gave the next morning, implying that her milking job had been substandard. Since no one can remember who won the bonspiel, I think it is safe to say that she did a better job of milking the cows than they did of winning the bonspiel. Of course, we could not remember Auntie Joyce without remembering Chicken Day. Chicken Day was the great summer event when our families would get together to have fun butchering chickens. The chicken crew would work and visit and work until the job was done. Auntie Joyce and I were the gâteaux and spent many a chicken day across the old army table cleaning chickens. I remember Auntie Joyce giving me a compliment on my chicken cleaning skills and thinking it was high praise coming from her. We last visited Auntie Joyce in November. We had a really good visit. She talked about her family, and she was especially happy about the new house on the farm that her family was now able to use and enjoy. Auntie Joyce will be missed and fondly remembered.
Thank you very much. Wonderful words to hear and to share. And I obviously could see some recognition in some of the words that were shared. And, you know, one of the things that happens quite naturally, whether we're gathered around the living room reminiscing or gathered in time like this, is there tends to be a little overlap in stories, which to me seems quite normal. The only thing I found out growing up is that one person's version of the story wasn't exactly like the other one, so I'll be listening closely for this. So at this time, I want to invite her son Ian to come forward and to share the memories. Oh, no, sorry. Alan. They sound the same. Alan to come forward. Have you? Oh. That's okay. Half the time I couldn't remember any of my 5 kids' names, and I just, hey, you.
Hello, everybody. I'm grateful to see so many wonderful faces with us here today. There's no way to wrap up what Mom meant to us in one sitting, and there's also no way to talk about Mom without including Dad. So I'll start by remembering some of my earliest memories of Mom. A typical morning on the weekend usually went something like this, and it's very typical of many households with children. Little blonde fuzzball enters mom and dad's bedroom, goes around to mom's side of the bed, and I would just stare at her until she would wake up and startled that I was just standing there staring at her. I'd say, "Mom." And with her teeth very clenched, she would go, "Oh, what? Is it time to get up yet?" "It is 5:17 a.m. "No, go back to bed." "Okay, Mom." 5 to 10 minutes later. "Mom." "What?" "I'm hungry." "Grant." Okay. I'm sure this is typical of many families with kids. Ian would wake up Mom too. Catherine probably did as well, but either grew out of it or was smart enough to know that Ian and I would wake up Mom first, and she didn't have to face the clenched teeth of whispered fury when she was so desperately wanting to sleep. My earliest memory ever in my life is Mom placing me on their bed after a bath, and Mom and Catherine playing bongo bums on my butt cheeks as I crawled around giggling and trying to get away. She was our mom. She was the best mom. And with all her qualities, the good, the bad, and the dental work, we often jokingly wondered about how thick a dental file Mom had at City View Dental Clinic from the decades of appointments and the work she'd had done. I'm sure it had something to do with her clenched teeth of whispered fury with us over the years. I knew when Mom was upset with me, not because she ever yelled, and if she did, I don't remember it. But what I do remember is that she would talk very intensely through extremely clenched teeth, and I knew that I crossed the line. But Mom and I would go on dentist dates in the last 7 years, as we were both patients of Dr. Mang. And Dr. Mang was beginning to retire, and I say that because I think he's still trying to retire, or in the act of retiring. He had his last appointment with Mom some time ago, and he came in and did his checkup, and at the end, he held Mom's hand and thanked her for trusting him with her and Dad's dental care all these years, and it was a very touching moment. And as I was settling up with the front desk staff, they had Mom's dental file on the desk, and yes, it was everything we thought it would be, Ian. It was huge. It was, yeah. I had to chuckle at the size of it. Mom memories often include food. When we came home from anywhere, it always smelled like home cooking. The best days were when you walked in the door from the cold into the warm house and it smelled like onions and celery frying in a pan ready for the next ingredients, or fresh baked bread. I would always yell, "Mom, I'm home," and Mom would always holler from the kitchen, "I'm in here," and I always knew she was in the kitchen. That's just where she always was. You could hear food frying on the stove, or she'd be at the sink with a corded phone tucked in her neck talking to somebody. She also kept up the habit of warning us well into our 20s and beyond when she was going to use the food processor by calling out, "Big noise," as she didn't want to startle us. Once in a while, there would be an interesting odor coming from the kitchen. I can remember a particularly rainy weekend when Mom decided to make relish from scratch and then can it. At that time, I wasn't a fan of relish. And even though Dad liked relish, he promptly asked me if I wanted to go outside in the rain and fix the fence in the backyard that had been leaning over for years, that very rainy afternoon. So we needed to go fix that fence in a hurry. But Mom had decided the kitchen was getting too warm and fumy and opened the window and the smell of boiling vinegar wafted into the backyard. There was no escape. Later, when cleaning out Mom's house in the basement, the job of cleaning out the food room came upon us, which was our term for the pantry in the basement. It was a closet underneath the basement staircase. It was like entering the Smithsonian of canned goods, both bought and homemade. Pickled everything, whole canned chickens, and every type of Co-op Gold brand canned food the store had to offer, and a few fancy Campbell cans as well. I don't know how old Mom's canned relish was, but I took a few home with me, and opened, even with the risk, I opened them up, and they still looked good, and they still smelled good, and I finished them over time. And the funny part was some of them were canned in old Cheese Whiz jars or just old jam jars from the store, as all our other sealers were also full. She did not waste anything. Other childhood memories were going to the Pretty Farms near Weyburn, Pretty Family Farms. We had our farm growing up, but it was nothing like going to the Pretty Family Farms and seeing all the animals. We got to see where, oh, here we go, crossover. This is my take. We got to see where chickens come from firsthand, as I and others have brought up Chicken Day at Uncle Edward's and Auntie Lynn's farm. It was an annual event for a while, and I sometimes got to miss school as it was such a big deal. Being the youngest, I mostly transported the birds around and cut off their feet and watched the cats walk off with chicken heads. Yeah. Join me, everyone. Here we are. We're in the moment. By the way, if you're ever at a table with Mom at a family dinner, she did not shy away from telling you exactly how your food gets to your plate. So now it's your turn. Okay. Mom told the story from time to time when she took me for a vaccination when I was quite really young, and I described all the processes involved in butchering a chicken to the public health nurse. And she would always include my quote of, "and then you cut the heads off." I think Mom was a tad embarrassed, but impressed with my attention to all the detail. Don't worry, that part's done now. Dinner guests would often believe, oh no, it's not done. Dinner guests would often couldn't believe that the chickens were almost the size of grocery store turkeys, and the turkeys we got from Uncle Danny and Auntie Lori's farm went above 30 pounds regularly. But nobody knew that more than Mom, as she was the one waking up at 4:30 a.m. to put a bird in the oven so we could all have a family holiday meal at lunchtime. To this day, it's my job in our house to clean off a chicken or a turkey carcass after a family meal and save the meat for soup and give our dog Norman the scraps. Mom went to great lengths to save every meat scrap for the barn cats at our farm. Those cats also came from Edward and Lynn's place. Uncle Edward always claimed that they were guaranteed mousers, and he was always right. We would do many things as a family. Before Catherine and Ian moved to university, we'd go to church at Minto Church. Sunday lunch was often the exact same every week because it was Dad's job to make lunch on Sundays. So we had macaroni and cheese every week, otherwise known as macaboogies. I don't know where that name came from, other than Dad had a very particular vocabulary that didn't make much sense to us, but he was committed to it. Now, Dad would make it by boiling a massive Grandma Dorothy-sized pot of noodles, add a can of condensed tomato soup and a blop of milk as the sauce. I didn't know macaroni as anything else except for that and Kraft Dinner growing up. Dad knew that I didn't like melted cheese in my noodles, and as a kid he'd put aside a bowl of soupy macaboogies for me and added the cheese for the rest of everyone else, and we'd dig in. Then as a family we'd go to the living room, and we'd play crokinole, cribbage, and listen to Royal Canadian Air Farce. Then we would have the weekly family meeting. Yep, that's right, the groans are appropriate, in which everyone had to outline their next week and homework and such. Then we did the house chores. It was after all that Dad would suggest going to the farm and checking the garden and the cats in the barn. Now, we didn't do many things at our farm like normal farming families, partially because we didn't live out there and we had lives in town, but as the years passed, I started to work for our wonderful friends and neighbors, the Francises, during my university summers. I noticed that our family often didn't start things very early out there, unless it was seeding or spraying time. In fact, I began to call ourselves nocturnal farmers or nocturnal gardeners, as we would often show up about 4 p.m. in the afternoon and start a project as the day was ending. I distinctly remember picking vegetables, including potatoes, by the headlights of the old brown Chevy Suburban and consequent Suburbans after that on more than one occasion, as we had to be at school and Dad had to go to work on Monday, and we couldn't get back out for another week. Oh, the sweat and the mosquitoes and the dropping the peas in the dirt and digging spuds out knowing we'd probably left some in the ground that we couldn't see. But we had to beat the frost sometimes. However, Mom and Dad knew how to grow a garden, and there were many impressive vegetable crops over the years. When we sat down as a family or had guests over, the difference in taste was clear. Many comments were made on how tasty the food was growing up. Mom was a caregiver to us and many others in her lifetime. She helped us 3 kids to become whatever we wanted to be. Just for myself, I had soccer, Cub Scouts, school bands and choirs, White Hackle Pipe Band, piano and trumpet lessons, drama productions, curling, and so on. She supported us to follow our passions and also let us fall and helped us up, or not help us up, depending on what we needed to become our own independent people. Now, having said that, I did have my lunches made and laundry done for me through high school, so I had a pretty privileged existence. I do remember as I grew in high school, my lunches became doubled. 2 juice boxes, 2 sandwiches, 2 desserts, and so on. And if memory serves me correct, Mom and Dad had our main floor fridge, 2 basement fridges at one time. One was just for the garden carrots, which she figured out a way to store successfully until the next season's carrots were almost ready, and a full-size chest freezer in the basement, and the farm fridge, the farm porch fridge, and the farm basement full-size chest freezer, and the potato bin, keeping food on hand to keep us all fed. Had COVID happened at that time, we would have been ready, as Dad was already stockpiling toilet paper in the 2010s. In fact, when COVID hit and we were having trouble finding toilet paper in the stores, we drove to the farm and grabbed a bundle to tide us over until it showed up on the shelves again. Thank you, Dad. I phoned Mom and told her about that, and she said, "Well, I'm not surprised. He was always buying it. Good idea on you guys." Family camping was another full family adventure. We had an old 70s camper that made many trips. I can remember helping Mom clean out the trailer every summer, and she prepped everything to be packed inside. An impressive collection of Garfield comic books lived in the upper shelf by the door. I can also remember Dad working on the old Suburban, getting the equalizer hitch ready, checking the tires, wheel bearings, plumbing, and so on. Traveling was sometimes easy, or sometimes we were stopped in a different, stopped in a different city and a different province, getting a complete carburetor overhaul somewhere. We used to tease Dad about being so tired on camping trips. When we got to our destination and all set up, he'd collapse and fall asleep, as he had done all this preparing after his work hours and the morning of leaving. Experiencing our own family camping, I see similarities in how Amanda and I get everything ready and have to say I have a greater appreciation for the tired dad that we encountered on those trips, who was very hard to wake up and get going every morning. But I also remember fishing, cooking, eating the fish, chopping wood, horseback rides, mini golf, ice cream, and Mom letting us eat sugar cereal because we were on holidays. Dad would point out all the things that we passed on the road along the way. Those are the Three Sisters Mountain Range. Tarpco, they were a client of mine. That road leads to the Big Muddy. Interesting place down there, he'd say. Callaway Park is just over there. And look, a KOE campground in 8 kilometers. They have the sewer hookups right on the site. Ooh, ah. All the while, Mom would pass out sandwiches, fruit, and veggies. We'd spit BC cherry pits out the window and listen to old 8-track cassettes. When Willie Nelson's On the Road Again comes on the radio, I'm transported back to those trips. When it came time for Mom to make the move, do you want my water? There you go. 2 hands. Okay. When it came time for Mom to make a move out of our big family house in Moose Jaw, she decided to come to Regina and live in a nice facility near our house to continue her grandma duties as Ian and Jen's family were moving to Saskatoon. Mom had hoped to be involved in our kids' lives like she was in Grace and Bennett's, but unfortunately, a Parkinson's diagnosis changed those plans, and for the first time in a long time, the caregiver of all caregivers needed care herself. Anyone who knew Mom would agree that she was very proud, and this transition to needing care weighed heavily on her, as I imagine it does for most people. Even with her advancing dementia that came along with her Parkinson's, and through the bladder infection hallucinations, she always locked in on the thought pattern of caring for others. I would visit her in the hospital as she was recovering, and she would ask where Grace, Bennett, Clark, and Miles were, and if they had a ride home and enough to eat. She would tell me the UTI-inspired visions of the day or night before. They were often of her brothers, Edward, Danny, and Raymond. She often described that they were hunting or that they were off in a boat doing some kind of job or rescuing something. She would ask if her sister Evelyn was okay as well. I even spent some time being seen as Dad for short stints, as I'm sure I resembled a younger version of him. For a while, I felt bad that she was in the hospital alone when I went home, but then I realized in her mind she was with everyone she needed to be with until the antibiotics finished their job. A few years ago, she told me that she woke up on her birthday and had a vision of Dad at the foot of her bed with a couple silhouetted figures on either side of her. In her words, he was just sitting there with his big, stupid smile waving at me, and then he was gone. We both agreed that it was extremely interesting that she saw that on her birthday. Dementia can have silver linings as well. I found that her filter and boundaries started to loosen, and that she would speak her mind a bit more. I found that I was having conversations with her that I'd never had in my entire life. She could remember things from her younger days that I had never heard before. From my point of view, her older memories remained intact the longest and were consistent till the end. I felt a special bond with Mom that was different than the one I had growing up with her. Caring for aging parents is challenging and hard at times, and I have been grieving Mom for years now as her condition descended. But it was also a privilege and an honor to give Mom, the one who gave us so much, what time and efforts we had. Her face always lit up when one of us walked into her suite. Mom and Uncle Murray had a funny saying over the years from a harvest a long time ago, and I may not get all the details correct, but the essence of the story was, Murray was combining at night, and Mom was trucking grain for him. Everyone else must have been off tending to something else or fixing something, and I'm sure when we go to that other room, I'll get the fill-ins here. And Mom and Murray were talking to each other on the CB radio to coordinate where to unload the combine into the truck. It was extremely dark, and Mom had noticed there were no other lights in the field as everyone else had gone, and said, "Is there anybody out there?" To which Murray cracked on the radio with his big happy voice, "It's just you and me, babe." And they laughed about that for decades. On one of Mom's appointment days, we were getting into the truck to go, and Mom said, here we go again, hey?" And I replied back in my best Uncle Murray happy-spirited voice, "It's just you and me, babe." And we laughed so hard I couldn't start driving for a couple minutes. And I'd like to take this last moment and personally thank everyone who cared for Mom in her care facilities, hospital stays, and appointments over the years. She had excellent caring professionals that got her to the finish line in the best way she could. It couldn't have happened without all of them. They treated her and our family with respect, dignity, and love. And one very special mention to our longtime friend and neighbor, Dr. George Miller, who operated on Mom years ago when her appendix burst and she came close to ending her journey with us. Thank you, George, for saving Mom and giving us another 2.5 decades with her. Having George and Kate across the street for 32 years was a godsend to our family. I'll always miss Mom, but I don't miss her health challenges and condition at the end. She is truly in a better place, and probably with Dad and Catherine and all her loved ones that have crossed over. And for that, I'm grateful for my time with her and the family that Mom and Dad made a lifetime of memories and lessons for us. Rest well, Mom, and we love you.
Well done, thank you.
Thank you. You want that? Here, I'll take that.
Well, Alan, thank you for sharing that. I couldn't help but feel as those stories were going on. We're kind of like a big family gathered around the fireplace in the living room, swapping stories, sharing laughter, and finding out new stories or different versions of it. It all brings us together in this time, and for that I am grateful. Now, to finish up, the big guy. Well, he is kind of big. Ian, please come on up. And I just want to warn you, he has his progressive glasses on.
Well, thank you. I was going to warn them later.
Oh,
I
okay.
apologize for that. It makes it tough to dial in.
Yes, but I'm sure you're much more practiced than when you first got them.
Age comes for us all, but yeah, we're doing our best. Yeah. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you. This is great. If I can just add the final line of the story about you telling the health nurse about everything that was happening on Chicken Day. Mom loved this. She kept laughing because you told the whole story, and at the end, apparently, the health nurse said, "And you saw all of this?" So she wasn't 100% sure that you were actually going to leave with her or with some assistance on that day. But thank you, everyone, for coming here today, and Danelle and Alan for joining in on the storytelling here today. It is a great comfort to have people around on days like this. And we've had a few of them over the past year. So I'm just going to put in a request now. Reunions, barbecues. Somebody get married, for crying out loud. Let's get together on a happy occasion and we can have all this fun. We can dress up too. It'll be great. Thank you. We can vary it up and that'll be good. Mom told me just a very few things about what she might want on a day like today. She said she just wants she requested one hymn, which we included, and a couple more, because come on, you can't just have one. And she also said that a really good time for a day like today, a service like today, is sometime between spring thaw and seeding. So I know we're before seeding. I did not anticipate 3 blizzards this week, but we did our very best. So thank you all for venturing out here. I also had trouble gathering thoughts for this. There's a lot of them, and I can't hit all of them, but I wanted to try and paint a picture of the story she would tell us about her life, kind of from as she went through it. So that's kind of how I approached this today. And we do have a slideshow later. You'll maybe catch some of these moments in the slideshow too. Mom was really the strongest, hardest working, most loyal, and fiercely loving person I've known. Whatever she set out to do, she succeeded. But she studied, she practiced, she put in every human effort to get there. When she lent her talents to something, she was all in. And that all started with her family, the Pretties. We grew up seeing and hearing the stories from Mom about the way they worked and lived together, and the things they learned on the farm growing up. Going to a one-room schoolhouse where 3/4 of the children in the school were your own siblings. Or did you get as high as like a ratio of 5 out of 6 or something like that some years, I'm sure. It was pretty amazing. Her big sister Evelyn wanted to become a teacher, and she practiced on young Joyce at home. So Mom actually got to skip a grade by the time she got to school because she was done her own work early and was listening in on the older kids' classes anyway. She told me once that she remembered learning how to skate on a pond on the farm when she was very young. And she was frustrated because she kept falling. She was young, she kept falling. And then her big brother Raymond came by and sat down and laced up his skates. And Mom said she was shocked. She'd never seen Raymond playing at all. He was always working. So she was thinking, well, he's obviously going to struggle like me, so at least we'll do this together. And then to her shock, he stood up and took off gracefully like he skated every day. And she was so mad because she was still putting in the work to catch up. I got the feeling she spent a lot of time trying to keep up with her brothers, and she was very competitive. She said she had to wait for a shot at a prize-winning 4-H calf until her brothers finally aged out of the contest, so that she could finally have first pick of the calves at home. And as soon as she did, she won. Mom also credited her brother Edward for teaching her how to shoot. And this came in very handy when she was seeing a young man from Moose Jaw called Grant. Sometime she delighted in this story. Sometime when they were getting to know each other, Grant, Dad, and Joyce found themselves out shooting rabbits. And a rabbit showed up. And no animals have actually been harmed today. There's just a lot of stories about it happening. I just realized there's been a heavy amount of animal casualties that I didn't understand until I read all these, heard all these together. Everyone is just fine. But a rabbit did show up, and Mom aimed and took her shot. Rabbit didn't flinch. And Dad started laughing, saying, "Oh, you missed." And he was still laughing. And Mom turned to him and said, "No, I was aiming for its eye, so I shot it in the eye." And then that rabbit way off in the distance went, and Dad stopped laughing. So Mom said, yeah, well, I learned from Edward that if you hit the eye, the pelt doesn't have any extra holes, so it's worth more. So that's just how we learned to do it. It's also pretty handy to show a young suitor just how stone cold you can be early on in the process, so he knows what he's getting into. Later, when Mom and Dad would go fishing, Mom would usually be the one posing with their catch of the day for photos, and that was usually because Mom was the one who caught the fish. Mom talked about going to the big school in Talmadge with many epic sleigh rides and wagon rides, bringing the pretty kids to school and back every day. Few of them ended in calamity. The ones that did made for great stories later about chasing after horses and carrying pieces of the sleigh after them as well. When she went through school, she was the valedictorian of her class of 2 in grade 12. She was the top 50% of her class. She liked to brag about that. And she gave a speech there. She was actually later named valedictorian of her class at Sask Technical Institute, or STI, in Moose Jaw. And that was amazing to me because Mom described herself as being terribly shy. I think the more accurate word is really there was some anxiety going on there. She had a real fear of public speaking, but that didn't stop her. When she was called upon for school and church events, or she was the spokesperson who led the campaign in Swift Current to bring the block parent program to Swift Current. So she'd talk to the Rotary Club, she'd do all these things, so she'd practice, she'd work, and she'd get there. She'd prepare, she'd overcome, and do what she set out to do. The block parent thing made me laugh as we were looking through some of the old documents there, because I found a news clipping she took of us from when she was talking about the importance of the block parent program in Swift Current for kids' safety. And it had a picture of Catherine and I as very young children. It said, posing by a block parent sign, it said, "Catherine and Ian McWilliams of 42 McDonald Crescent think child safety is important." We're still here. It's all good. Mom didn't give up. She didn't let go of anything either. Her parents lived through the Great Depression. So, as Al said, Mom hated letting anything go to waste. The fridge was full of the smallest packages of leftovers. Closets and storage rooms were full of odds and ends that might be useful later. I got frustrated and called this hoarding later on, but it really came in her from a seed of that need to hold on. It was a fierce devotion, really, to family, to friends, to making the most and bringing the most she could to them. That same instinct is why she kept every Christmas card she was ever sent, all the crafts and that the kids and her grandkids made, and the crafts that she made as a girl. She didn't give up. She didn't let go of if she thought it was important. And there are positive and negative sides to these traits. On the upside, it was the thing that kept her sewing costumes for school and church pageants long into the night, baking buns and other treats for fundraising concessions she was running, shuttling us kids to all of the various activities, music, sports, art, school, and showing up to every show, every event, every match, every parent-teacher interview, every celebration and event that we were in. She was solid, unfailing support. The other side of that kind of stubbornness is she took great pride in her perfect eyesight. Perfect. Only one in the house not to have glasses because of my perfect eyesight, she'd say. And she didn't admit she needed reading glasses until we caught her at church one day standing up and holding a hymnal and reading the hymnal of the person in the row in front of her. So, you drove us here. And I can confirm she did crack teeth yelling at me. You may not have heard her, but she yelled through those ground teeth in the early days. And she didn't really know what to do with me a lot. She actually told me once, "I have no idea where you got so how you became so stubborn." And I said, "Really? You don't?" And that was not a popular answer. She might have laughed about it later. I hope she did. When Mom was becoming valedictorian at Saskatchewan Technical Institute's new Secretarial Sciences program in Moose Jaw, she became the best thing that ever happened to a young man named Grant, who was in the accounting program. She said that her first impression of him was that he was snobby because he literally looked down his nose at people a lot. Later, she found out that he just had terrible eyesight and early technology contact lenses. He was desperately trying to keep them in his eyes. And that's just how he walked around while he was wearing those hard contact lenses. So she gave him a chance. Despite all of his faults, she saw something in the lad, and eventually they married and moved to Calgary. And Joyce worked as a legal secretary, while Grant earned a Bachelor of Commerce degree at the University of Calgary, or U of K, as he affectionately called it. He had a unique way with words, macaboogies. In doing so, Joyce earned what they called a PhD, or put hubby through. And Mom was working as a legal secretary at Aquitaine Oil Company. She was excellent at it. When she told her boss that she was leaving to have a child, he was just devastated. He sat in his office and didn't come out for like an hour or so. So I hope he got over it. He did give her a great big rocking chair that we still have in the family today, though. So his loss was our family's gain in a lot of ways. Once Grant had his degree and daughter Catherine was born, Mom wanted to be a mom. So she set herself to work getting Dad a better job back in Saskatchewan. Dad had the most professional resumes and telephone follow-up thanks to Mom. She was relentlessly pleasant and thorough. And Dad got his job with the province and Mom got to be a mom. Returning to Saskatchewan, Grant and Joyce were an inseparable team, raising their family, growing their gardens, and farming the farm like Al was talking about. I'll wrap it up soon, I promise, guys. Sure. Oh, I am lying. We just had the best mom. And I know a lot of people say that, and I'm going to let you think it's true. I know it's true to me. We had a blessed and safe life. We had what we needed and learned how hard the work is to create that kind of comfort. Dad always said he was able to go slay dragons at work because he knew home was solid, thanks to Mom. As kids, we were always able to strive and grow and try new things because we knew that at home we always had a safe place to land. My kids were also blessed. We lived in Moose Jaw when Mom and Dad were there. So I was blessed to see my kids with their grandma Joyce, an amazing grandma. My kids also knew the joy of walking in the front door on a winter day when fresh buns were coming out of the oven, or reaching a questing hand into the cookie jar to see what waited inside there. Mom really enjoyed remembering once she was in the living room and Grace came into the house and she just heard everything that happened in the kitchen. Little 5-year-old Grace pushing the chair across the kitchen floor up to the countertop, thumping up on top of the chair, and you heard the lid come off the cookie jar, ka-punk, and then reaching in and reaching in. And her hand hit the bottom and there was nothing in there. And little 5-year-old Grace said, "What the hell?" And Grandma laughed for years. Sometimes the jar's empty. That's also a lesson. Grace and Bennett are actually here. They're just watching from the room across the way. And Grace told me just when we got here that she put together some memories as well, and then she texted them to me because she doesn't remember how old I am. So I promised her I'd read her memories too, if you'll bear with me here. This is Grace McWilliams talking about her grandma. She says, "Growing up, Grandma and Grandpa's house was always where we would go. She would babysit me and my brother while my parents were away, and I learned a lot from her. Anything my grandma was doing, I wanted to do with her, and any way she could include me, she would. When she was gardening on the farm or in the city, my grandma showed me what were weeds. When I wanted to help her back, she would let me mix the ingredients and make shapes with the dough. When we were in the basement once, we found an easel that Catherine used to paint on as a kid, or paint with as a kid. I remember bugging my grandma so much to use it, promising I would not mix the colors, I wouldn't knock it over, I won't break it. Grandma was stubborn, but I'm her granddaughter, so I was too. Finally, she let me use it. I remember sitting there for hours just because she trusted me with it." That's from Grace. Grandma Joyce was also expert at getting kids to nap. My kids hated naps. So did their dad, come to think of it. My kids were especially stubborn about it, though. I have no idea where they got that from. Mom was wily, though. She had lots of tricks by that time. My kids just didn't stand a chance. Her specialty was an extra slow drive from the farmyard down to Hickory Corner and back, while she would hand half grapes into the back seat until eventually the little kid couldn't reach up and grab them anymore and was just out. And then she'd drive back to the farmyard and find a piece of shade where she'd park and the birds would sing to them while they both had a nap. Mom's generosity spread wider than her home, like we talked about a lot today. Her table welcomed more than 20 people on holidays and a dozen or more on regular days. Her gardens fed family, friends, church groups, and food banks. We all learned about the skill, work, and dedication it takes to get the food from the ground and onto the table. Like Al said, Dad passed in 2018, and theirs was a profound partnership that Mom felt, and she felt that loss deeply. Mom did her best to keep going, but that's when she started her journey with Parkinson's. It felt like we lost Dad all at once, but we lost Mom in little pieces. So I'm sad Mom's gone, but I'm relieved that she's free from suffering. And I'm happy to think of Mom and Dad finally resting together after a life well lived together. Joyce's life was an expression of devotion. It was evident in her works. She built a safe, solid, and joyous home with Grant. She raised 3 children and welcomed 4 grandchildren into the world. So I can say goodbye today. But I don't need to let go. Because I'm stubborn, like my mom. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ian. So much to process, to reminisce on. In all of that, my conversations with Alan and Ian, I've come to some of my own opinions about Joyce, which have gone into my thought process in selecting these 2 scriptures that I'm going to share with you now. I haven't shared one with them, because I know they're stubborn and they might disagree with me, so I just went ahead and did it. I think they're most appropriate choice for this day, not just for Joyce, but for all of you. May they bring you truth and comfort. From James's letter in the New Testament, he writes, "What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith but do not have works? Can faith save you?" he writes. "If a brother or sister is naked and lacks daily food, and one of you says to them, 'Go in peace, keep warm, and eat your fill,' and yet you do not supply their bodily needs, what is the good of that?" So faith by itself, if it has no works, is dead, writes James. Just want you to think about that as you listen to the stories and remember them. And in the Gospel of Matthew, I hope these words do bring all of you comfort. "Then the king will say to those at his right hand, 'Come, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me.' The righteous will answer him, 'Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you a drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it we saw you sick or in prison and visited you?' And the king will answer them, 'Truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you've done it for me.'" May those pieces of wisdom and truth from our biblical stories rest well in our hearts. I'm going to invite you now. You've been sitting a while. There's been lots of voices, but most of yours haven't been exercised. So I'm going to invite you in joining in as we sing our first hymn. And this is the hymn that was alluded to earlier as the only one to be played and sung at Joyce's funeral. So we'll continue to honor Joyce by singing "Just As I Am."
But that thy
Please be seated. Well, you could remain standing, but I am almost as wordy as some other people I know. Not quite. I'll try and keep it under control. It's been my privilege to come to know Joyce through the thoughts and memories and voices of both Alan and Ian. And as I was listening to the stories, some of which were shared with me, some which were repeated by all of them, I thought, what do I have to say? Wow, now we could just let it stand here and we'd be done. But I have to say, I did type a few words. And, I have to say it's only 11 pages. But there's 16 font, unlike some of my friends here who can read text that big. So I'm not in fear that I'm going to go on too long. But I think it's really important. It's important to name things, to articulate them, and to embrace them. So today we gather in that familiar and yet sacred space, a place where memory meets grief. We try to carry them both together, where gratitude and a deep sense of loss sit side by side. And as we do that, and as we gather, we do what people have always done when someone they have loved has died. We begin to tell the truth about their life, or our version of it. When someone we die, we naturally reminisce. And we begin to tell that about that life. Not all of it, of course. I mean, Ian tried, and he couldn't fit it all in. But we can't. Life with Joyce was far too full and active to ever be told. But we tell enough, I hope, to begin to see again who she actually was and what legacy she has left behind for people. Because despite her confessed shyness of being perhaps dominated in childhood by these older brothers, Joyce's life was anything but small. It may not have been loud, not in the public sense anyway that our world often measures as creating importance, boisterous and flamboyant. That certainly wasn't Joyce. But it was loud in a very different way. It was deep, and that life was steady. And more than that, as we all know and come to be reminded, it was an important life on so many levels. There's a truth that keeps rising about everything that's been shared about Joyce. In your own stories at home and gathered here today, there's one that particularly strikes me. Not because it was articulated up front, because it wasn't, but because it's a deep truth. Joyce lived her faith quietly. Not in a look at me kind of way, not in a way that, look at me, what a great Christian I am. That certainly wasn't. She didn't look to draw attention to herself. But she lived that faith quietly in a way that simply showed up where it mattered. And over time, that kind of life builds something amazing and sacred, something strong, something that lasts, something that holds people together. And if you wanted to understand Joyce's faith, you certainly didn't need to ask her. You only needed to watch her. You could see it in her kitchen, as the stories have shared, in the meals that people still remember and talk about. Meals that weren't just food, but they were welcome. They were a sense of belonging. There was a sense of care that you experienced taking part in those meals. You could see it and experience it by being privileged enough to sit at her table. where there was always room for one more, whether there was 20 on holidays and 12 on other days. That table wasn't just full of food. It was full of people being held together and embraced in that deep faith of an abiding love and care for one another. I mean, you could see it in her hands. Hands that worked, hands that cared, hands that had even milked cows, that cleaned chickens on those long summer days, that baked, that sewed, that prepared, that gave and gave and gave again. And why? Because for Joyce, love and faith were not things you said, they were things you did, that you lived. It seems, as we hear those stories again, that she learned those lessons early in life. On the farm, in a family that knew hardship, with parents who lived through the Depression, a life where you didn't waste things because you just couldn't afford to. And perhaps a life where you didn't get let go of things too easily either because they were too hard to come by. And as Ian has shared, perhaps other stories you've heard, and Ian shared it, I must admit, with a mixture of love and a bit of hard-earned honesty, that even in later years as he tried to help organize and clean things up and make simpler for his mom by clearing things away, I'm not sure I would use the word hoarded, but making space. Joyce, you might say, remained very committed to holding on to things. A source of, I'm sure, quite some frustration for some people. But in its own way, it was simply another expression of how deeply she valued those things that she felt mattered in her life. Not just things, but people. It mattered, and her faith showed through not only at her table, but where you worked, because that's what it took to live. And in that place, Joyce learned something that stayed with her for her entire life. And that lesson she lived daily and imbued in all those around her was, you do not give up. And you don't let go of what matters. And of course, you guys were right, Alan. You can't talk about your mom without your dad. And then there was Grant. I almost feel like I knew him, or at least could empathize with him in some ways. Their life together was more than a partnership. It was a true bonding of purpose and soul and desire. Joyce, as mentioned, working as a legal secretary, earning what Grant called her PhD, while Grant went to school and earned his degree. And then returning to Saskatchewan to build a home, a family, a life together, which I believe she may have directed or had a hand in directing how that would evolve. Not stubbornness, but a real sense of care and responsibility. And by all accounts, as you've heard, it was a good life. It was a solid life. It was a life of security, a sense of belonging. It was a place, as you heard described, where children could grow and thrive because they knew there was always that place to hold them, to help them, and to return to. And I think this may be one of the most important things to say today. I think it's more than important. It's critical to understand Joyce. Joyce did not just teach her children about life. They witnessed it, they took part in it, and they learned in the meals, in the uncountable rides to every activity possible, in the presence at every event, in the steady, faithful showing up this week and next week and over again and over again and over again, always being that rock. And that kind of faith, the kind of faith that is lived deeply and truly, is the kind that stays and endures and abides through lifetimes. Ian and Al, what your mother gave you, what your mother left as a legacy in you, was not only care in the moment of your needs at the moment, but a way of living that now lives in you. Those seeds she planted with you have grown and grown mightily. Sometimes they've grown in ways we really didn't expect, but they've grown and they've gone through you to another generation. It was a way of living that now lives in you and beyond you. In the ways you care for others, in the ways you show up every day, in the ways you carry your strength, quietly perhaps, but no matter, her life continues in you both and your families. And as those of you that knew her, you also knew there was a side that maybe wasn't quite so obvious to everyone. There was humor in her life as well. Perhaps a bit of a dry, steady, low-key humor, but a critical humor nonetheless. The kind of humor that didn't need applause or standing ovations to be noticed. They were the moments that reminded you not only how special she was, how amazing she was, to remind you how strong she was, but they also taught you, most importantly, she was also human. Not perfection, but human, touchable, embraceable, and livable. Grounded, a real down-to-earth person that could relate to anyone. And life moves on, as we all know. In later years, life changed for her. Grant's death was a deep loss that most people won't understand. Theirs had been more than a partnership on so many levels. And his loss was felt and carried deeply within her. And then not long before her own passing, Joyce faced what I would describe as another traumatic loss, the death of her daughter, Catherine. A loss no parent should ever be expected to carry. Devastating on levels you'll never understand unless you've walked those shoes yourself. But like so much in her life, she strove to carry it with that strength at her core, though maybe fading. A strength of faith, love, and trust. And then came her long journey with Parkinson's. And the quiet work of continuing to be there every day, day after day, to be present. As Ian noted, it felt like losing her one little piece at a time, a much more drawn out and often more painful journey for those that travel with them. That's the particular weight of a disease like this. Not only what it takes from a person, but how it changes them and their daily rhythm of life for them and those who become their caregivers. The small losses, the gradual changes, the quiet adjustments along the way. Because this grief did not begin at the end. It had already been part of the road that Joyce walked with faith and strength throughout her life. But even there, even in that long letting go, her same core self was there. Maybe not accessible to her mind, but still present for all who lived with her. And so today we, as family and community, hold on to two things. We grieve because she mattered, because she was loved and cared for deeply, because a life like hers leaves a real absence. But we also give thanks for a life that was faithful, steady, generous, devoted, a life given, a life that held others. And perhaps this is where her faith speaks most clearly to us now. In a world that often rewards what is loud, what is visible, what is flashy, may Joyce's life remind us of something quieter and deeper. That a life of love lived faithfully and steadily over time is in itself a sacred story and testimony. It brings to mind the words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Not because her life was perfect, but because it was given and willingly shared. Given and shared with her family, with her community, given quietly in service with an abiding, deep sense of love. And now her work is done, the hands that labored are at rest, the life that held others is now being held. And we trust that she rests in the presence of the Holy One whose love she reflected all along in her life, knowingly or not. And perhaps in a way that might just feel right. Joyce, Grant, Catherine, all together again. After all the years, after all the work, after all the giving and the love, the struggling, they're together. So we give thanks for Joyce, for her life, for the ways she shaped those who knew her, for the quiet, steady faith that continues now in all of you. And I say amen to that. And so I've selected this next congregational hymn that we're going to join together and sing in honoring Joyce, because at the heart of it, it reflects a deep part of her identity. So won't you join in singing, "Make Me a Channel of Your Peace."
Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. There is injury, your healing power. Where there's doubt, to faith in you. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there's despair in life, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, only light. Where there's sadness, ever joy. Oh, Spirit, grant that I may never seek so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand.
and invite you to bow your heads and open yourselves to the movement of the Spirit as I offer these words of prayer. O God of grace, of hope, of life, and life eternal, we gather here as family and friends, and while we do, we give thanks for this time we've shared together in community, for the memories that have been shared, for the stories that have been told, for the love that has been named in so many different ways. Our hearts are full of gratitude for Joyce's life, a life that so many were privileged to share in, for the quiet times and ways she cared for others, for the strength she carried, and for the faith that she lived out day by day, and for all she imbued in those she loved. As we leave this place, may we not leave it with a sense of emptiness. May we rather carry with us what she has given, her example, her care, her way of living, and the depth of her love, a sacred gift experienced by all. Help us to carry that forward into our own lives and futures. We ask that you be with Joyce's family and all who loved her here, both today and the days ahead. In the quiet moments, in those times when loss feels so close again, and in the ways they continue to remember her. Surround them with your peace and with the support of those around them. And hold Joyce now in your care, at rest and at peace, gathered forever in your loving and holy presence. Amen. So, we have one more hymn to sing. Does anybody still have a voice? Yes. Well, I'm not sure how many of you know this hymn, and that's okay. As skilled as our accompanist is in singing and playing, this is one she's not overly familiar with, so it's going to be up to you to lead the singing part while she graces us with her playing. So I just want you to think of this as what it actually is. Just a family gathering. No judgment, just let it out. And if nothing else, just know that you're singing, putting it out there, is covering somebody else who's full of grace and gratitude for that. So I invite you to join his family in singing our last hymn, Be Still My Soul.
Be still, my soul, for God is by your side. Bear patiently the cross of grief or pain. Trust in your God, your Savior and your guide, who through all changes
shared them all together. But we're going to take 5 minutes now and allow visually those memories to come to us. As the family is a short and brief 5-minute PowerPoint slideshow that they wish to share with you before we move on to a repast together. So it invites you to sit back, take it in, and nobody's worried if you're sharing little stories. But you remember that? I saw that. It's part of who we are and what we do to honor Joyce. So enjoy. Preacher's always got to have the last word. So now go in peace from this place we've gathered and carry with you everything Joyce has ever meant to you. Her strength, her steadfastness, her devotion to you, her care, and her deep and abiding love for each and every one of you. And may the peace of God, which holds all things in compassion and grace, be with you now and always. Amen.